Hi there.
Hello. Welcome to PJ Chats, where we wear our pajamas and share our personal journeys on all things female. It might be boobs, as you see, bellies, or even bits, but it'll always be family friendly. So join us, get comfy, join the conversation, and together let's learn to celebrate who we are. And today I have Grace joining us. Hi, Grace.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me.
You're more than welcome.
I'm a little nervous about the boobs and bellies, but hopefully we'll get past that.
Well, I tell you what, because it's International Women's Week, we'll leave the boobs and bellies aside. How's that?
That's great.
We'll just talk about bits.
Yes. Oh.
All right, we won't even talk about bits today. Today we're going to talk about our interpretation of Girly and what it was like when you grow up in a world where the boys have it better than the girls. But before we move on to that, if you don't mind me taking a minute, I want to show you our new pillow to go on to the lovely PJ bed. So Donna Ferguson made and sent this to me recently. Thank you ever so much. PJ Chats. So today I thought it'd be really interesting, considering International Women's Day is just around the corner. I thought it'd be interesting to look at about being a girly. Growing up as a girl in a family full of boys and sort of what was expected of us, and about being raised in that family where we didn't quite fit into those expectations. So for you, growing up in Ireland with three brothers, what was some of the things that were expected of you as the girl in the family?
Well, I was also the oldest girl. The oldest. I have a sister as well. She's the youngest. So my brothers are sandwiched in between. And I was expected to be good, to be well behaved, to help, to be caring, to be a good example. So I had all those expectations. And when you're the oldest, you have nobody to put you wiser. We just do what you're told to do.
So were the brothers not expected to be caring and helpful and all those things as well?
No, they just seemed, I grew up in a bar in a small village in Ireland, and I remember asking at a certain point, I probably was 7 or 8, asking my mother how come I had to work in the house and the bar and my brothers didn't.
In a bar, like
Yeah.
a place to go drinking?
Yeah.
Booze up.
Well, it was a small family bar, and we didn't really have staff. We were the staff. The kids were the staff, and I was the oldest. I was kind of quick in the bar. I learned how to make change, and so I was in the bar, but I was also helping my mother in the house.
Right.
And even at a young age, I thought, well, this doesn't seem fair. How come my brothers don't help my mother? I'm the one that's kind of doing both.
And so what were they doing while you were working?
Well, they were younger, so they were either playing or they might help in the bar, but they didn't have to help in the house.
Right.
And somehow, even at a young age, I thought, that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, we actually had a family business too.
Did
we
you?
had an haberdashery store in London Market. So we sold cottons and ribbons and balls of wool and knit needles and things like that. And I wasn't expected to work on the family business because I was a girl.
Right.
So it was almost the opposite in that sense, because my brothers were expected to, move the merchandise around, set up the market stall and do all that kind of thing. And gradually I did start working on the store, but really it was more about my brothers doing that than me, and I was jealous that they got to do it. But I'm with you there. As far as the household things, it was the cooking and the cleaning, and all the household chores were to be done by women and not the boys in the house.
Yeah. And, on Christmas Day, the women would all be beavering in the kitchen, as I'm sure it's the same in many households. The men are, having a drink, they're watching TV, they're waiting for dinner to be made.
Yeah.
And there's no expectation that they would do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the women didn't even want them in the kitchen. We couldn't even blame the men for all of it, but the women were happy that was their domain.
Well, if my parents are watching this, I should just say, when I would drop a plate when I was doing the dishes, I did it on purpose. It was, by being a klutz, it was the only way I could get out of doing all those chores.
Right.
And I was really jealous that my brothers got to sit and watch all the shows on the TV on that day while we were in the kitchen doing the work. Yeah, and then they'd fall asleep afterwards and we'd do all the clear up again.
Yep. One of the things that happened when I was 11, I went to boarding school, and it was run by nuns. And in general, it was a good experience. Actually, I enjoyed being away from home. But it was a very restrained environment. We used to have boys in the school, but it was very, very controlled. So the expectation was that I would be would do what I was told, that I would follow the rules. There was a lot of expectations and I was raised Catholic, so the expectation was that I would be really good, that I would go to church, that I would go to mass, I would follow all the rules and be very compliant.
Compliant, and were you?
And I grew up in a very strict house. My mother was very strict, so I was compliant on one level, and on the other hand, I think probably all children have this secret life. I used to go into places in my imagination at night when I'd be going to sleep. And so that was the place where nobody else could enter.
Right.
So I suppose we all have our kind of secret kind of places. But
yeah.
But on the surface, I was a pretty good, very responsible child. I was, caring, all that kind of stuff.
Right. And the good Catholic girl.
The good Catholic girl, yes. I mean, that wore thin when I went to university. I went to university when I was 17. But I was very inexperienced. I mean, with boys and stuff, of course, you have crushes and all that sort of stuff. But most of that I was really inexperienced and very insecure. So,
oh, not a good combination.
No. And being the oldest, I didn't have older sisters or older brothers to kind of put, to ask questions. I was brave. I took lots of leads with things, but I didn't have someone to guide me. And my parents they were much older, so they weren't really a good source.
I was so shy and filled with fear that I was compliant for those reasons.
Yeah.
So little girl should be seen and not heard. That was me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to please the teachers, but I just didn't feel I had it in me. I didn't really understand what was going on at school. There was a lot of bad stuff going on at home, so school was just a distraction, really, more than anything. But I was compliant because of those things, and it was really leading into those teenage years that the compliance went on a little detour for a while. I mean, we were expected in our house to, around 16, it was time to leave home. And I think a lot of that had to do with being in social housing, having unemployed parents and so on, is that we were a lot of responsibility for our families.
Yeah.
So I was working at a very young age, and I actually did leave home at 16. But the ideal situation was to leave home, have the man of your dreams, and I emphasize man of our dreams in our house. And then, of course, the next thing, ideally as fast as possible, is you get the ring on the finger and the belly and the baby in the belly.
Right.
And it didn't matter how young you were.
Yeah.
But ideally in that order. So get out, marry, have the baby, move on in your life, and now provide the grandchildren.
Right.
And I worked on that, and I didn't get the order quite right, and it wasn't quite the blessing everybody hoped it would be, but that's a story for a whole other day.
Yeah.
But what were the expectations on you? You've come through this boarding school, you're the good Catholic girl, lined up hoping to be asked to dance, and then what?
Well, when the first night when I went to the boarding school, I was 11, and my mother, did all the preparation ahead of time, bought me the bobby socks and all the gear you needed with your uniform. And she said to me, the only thing that matters is to be a good Catholic. It didn't really matter how well I did at school. I mean, that wasn't the top priority. It was that I would be a good Catholic, which makes me smile now because my poor mother is...
And what would being a good Catholic girl mean to your mum?
Oh gosh, well, it would certainly mean that you got married first, then you got pregnant, that you were very modest, that you were very well behaved when you were dating. You only date the right guys. There was no word about women at that point. It was only you would just date a man. There were many expectations. And it would be someone that your mother would really like.
Oh.
They'll be really so they'd be sort of well educated from a good family.
The concept of being not just the good Catholic girl or the good Christian girl, but being the girl, the feminine, the girly girl.
Yeah.
And in our house, as I said, it was about being seen and not heard. And to be seen meant to be pretty, to have your hair done, to have, even though we were working class and didn't have a lot of resources, it was still about appearances and behaving girl-like and that kind of thing. So what was it for you?
For me, I went to university when I was 17, so I was off to Dublin. So I was, let loose.
Big city.
Yeah, big city. And I was really naive. I didn't really know exactly how to put on makeup. I had to learn what was in fashion. I didn't know what suited me. I was a tall child. I remember someone once telling me at school that I had a good figure. I didn't know what a good figure was. You know, I had no idea what the hell she was talking about.
There was that thing in the book where it says figure 3.
I remember just being amazed. I thought, I wonder what a good figure is. You know, I
Right.
was tall. I knew that part.
Right.
And of course, when you know, teenager, it's like, how big is your bust? It's all that sort of stuff that, you know, with other girls at school we'd be comparing.
Right.
So for me, there was there wasn't as much emphasis on kind of the looks and the, you know, the fashion stuff. I mean, I wanted to learn that stuff, but it was sort of, I sort of seemed to come through having worn a uniform for 5 years of high school. It was only when I come home on the holidays I got to wear regular clothes. So, but when I went to Dublin for those 3 years, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I had no experience of being away. I had experience being away from home, but I didn't. I had to learn all about dating, and you could sleep in for your lectures, and it was all different than school, which was very regimented. You know, I worked hard at school, and now suddenly there was these freedoms. You know, so it's all that sort of. But there
If
was.
you're going to university, it's not freedom, work hard. Okay, freedom at the beginning, then work hard.
But one of the things that I did at university is there was a karate class on, and one day I looked at it and I thought, God, that's really interesting. So this man, Tommy McGrain was his name, and he was the instructor, and he had the karate gear on, and I thought, I want to do that. Now, I didn't know anybody who was doing that, certainly no other girls, no women, but that just appealed to me.
And
So-
what do you think appealed? It must have been the fashion. You must have loved that.
Well, I think actually it was probably my brothers. I used to fight a lot with my brothers as a child, and they had these kind of hard muscles, and so I used to sort of fight and then run away and lock myself in the bathroom and make them mad, but I was safely, because they were real kind of bony and muscly.
Right.
But I think there was something about that with karate. I wanted to learn how to protect myself as well. I did karate for a lot of years. I went up to brown belt.
Wow.
And there was only 2 women in the club. I was one of 2, and there was a lot of guys. We were the only women.
Wow. And so how did your family respond to the fact that you were doing karate? I mean, what should you be doing? Flower arranging? I was actually a florist, so that's
Oh,
why
were
I
you?
said that, you know.
I think they just sort of were bemused by me, you know. They didn't know what to make of karate. They just sort of... Although I must say, as a child, give my mother her due, I remember writing to Santa looking for boxing gloves. And that year she bought me a pair of red boxing gloves.
Wow.
Well, Santa brought them.
Santa,
And
of
so I
course.
remember being very chuffed to have these red boxing gloves. So I guess that was maybe the seeds of the karate sort of phase of my life were set as a child.
So your parents were okay with the karate part, but it wasn't really the girly thing. Is that
No,
a
it
good
wasn't.
Catholic girl with
Well, the other thing, of
boxing
course,
gloves
but
and
I didn't
karate?
live with my parents. You see, I was in Dublin, and they lived, you know, 3 or 4 hours drive away. So it wasn't in their face all the time.
Right.
So that helped, because I think if I had been at home, they would have said that was really not, you know, not going to meet a good guy doing karate.
Oh.
You weren't girly girl enough. You know, you were not doing the right things.
Right.
So I think I got away from, because I wasn't living at home, I didn't have that pressure. But inside myself, I wondered why I was interested in karate. I mean, there were very few, only one other woman. I used to think, well, I don't know why, but I like it.
Yeah.
You know, there was so much pressure to not do that kind of thing, to be pretty and to, I'd just be interested. I mean, I was always interested in meeting boys, but the things that appealed to me seemed to be these kind of more boyish pursuits.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's sort of our rebellious side, because I know in our house, the boys got to do so much more than I
Yeah.
did. And it wasn't that my parents were trying to, well, this is my interpretation, not that they were trying to protect me, but they just didn't feel that girls could do those things. So my dad would hike the Brecon Beacons and the Lake District
Right.
and the Pennine Way and all these wonderful places I would still love to go back and do. But he would take my brothers because
Yeah.
it's a boy thing to do, and the boys had the strength to hike. Well, I have 2 legs too,
Yeah.
but somehow girls didn't do those things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a terrible shame. So hopefully that's going away, because really, as we know, girls and boys can do all the same things. It's
Yeah.
just- I mean, girls just do them better.
Yes.
We can do them in high heels. No. So when you put down the boxing gloves and the karate aside, what was some of the other things that you did that wouldn't be considered? Thank you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be considered girly girl things or the good Catholic girl things.
Yeah, well, when I finished my degree when I was 20, so, I mean, I had enough sense to know that I didn't know much about life to become a social worker, and I didn't want to inflict myself on my poor clients. So I decided I needed to get casual work experiences. And for a few years, I worked in a factory, I've worked in a bakery, and I had a job on a fishing trawler.
A fishing trawler?
Yes.
Like as in a big fishing boat that catches fish?
Yeah, exactly. So the day...
Okay, that's one I haven't done. That's one I'm not going to do.
Well, the day I arrived in, I had gone to the fishing port, and there were, again, no women on the trawlers, but somehow, I don't know where I got these ideas from, I wanted to get the job. And so I went to the inspector of the fisheries, and he said he would look for a berth. That's what it is a berth. It's not a job, it's a berth. And so he phoned me to say he had found a boat that would take me. So I was just so excited. My mother was, when I told her, she was ready to kill me, and she thought I was going to drown or be raped or whatever. But anyway, I set off.
It's nothing about it being bad luck to have a good Catholic girl on a fishing trawler.
I don't know. This trawler had a woman once before, so they were more open. So I was the deckhand. I was also the cook. So I did it for 3 months, and as soon as I got the job, I was called for my first social work interview. I thought, oh gosh. So I went for the interview, they offered me the job, and I said, would they wait 3 months before I started?
Did you tell them, could you just hold off on that ideal job, please? Because I'd really like to get on a fishing trawler.
I think they were amused because when I explained that I had just got this other job on the fishing trawler and I wanted to work the summer and start with them in September, but they agreed. And
That's incredible. Whoever you were, good on you.
So they waited for 3 months, and so I got the job. There were 7 guys and me. The guys were a little hard on me. They thought I was a wuss because when you were out at sea, you couldn't have a shower because it's very topsy-turvy.
For 3 months?
No, not for 3. Every week you got to come back to port.
Oh, okay.
But if in the middle of the week you got to come in with the fish, I would take a quick shower on the boat. And they thought I was really a wuss to want to have a shower in the middle of the week. So you can just imagine living with 7 guys.
Uh-huh.
And so anyway, that's what I used to do as my own...
Wow,
so
mark
every
that
weekend,
up as if you're taking a shower in the middle of the week on a fishing trawler, you are a wuss.
Yeah. And the other thing is I had these orange kind of oilskins, and so everybody knew in the port if you had clean oilskins, you were new. So you were trying to get them dirty as quick as possible. The fact that I was a woman wearing the oilskins probably was more noticeable than I expected. Something in me wanted to do these things. I thought, I'm just going to have adventures. I didn't seem very good at the dating end of it, so I thought, well, I'll just have adventures then instead, do things that I want to do. And I remember the parish priest told my mother and my best friend that he hoped that the best friend wouldn't do the kinds of things I was doing. So clearly he disapproved of me being on the trawler.
So the priest actually said, I hope your friend, Grace's friend, doesn't go on the fishing trawler too.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you'd have been Gavin or Gerry that went on the
exactly.
fishing trawler, the priest would have probably been quite happy with that, feeding the people with the fishes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Well, rather you than me. I guess the only thing I have
what have you done that's like
anywhere
that?
close to that would be working in a turkey factory.
Oh, gosh. I wouldn't have liked that.
It was a time in my life where I was struggling to stay afloat.
Yeah.
And I learnt, if you go for an interview for a job and they don't show you around, don't accept the job unless you really, really have to. I thought it was so interesting. They weren't showing us around and they weren't showing us what we were being interviewed for.
So what did you do in the factory?
Oh, I was a deboner.
Oh, gosh.
So I'd never been in a factory before. I'd never been in a meat factory.
Yeah.
There's no windows. There's no natural light. It's all like the light we have in here. The smell was more chlorine than anything because it's so bleached, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And without grossing anybody out, I didn't get to see the animals as animals by the time they came to me.
Yeah.
But we would stand all day long doing the same 3 cuts. And I can still do them around the thigh bone. And it was not a pretty environment.
Yeah.
And I was surprised even then, some of the better jobs in there only went to the men.
Yeah.
It really didn't matter. And there was no rhyme nor reason to it.
Yeah.
But it was just... and it would be an unwritten rule. But you could apply for that job, you wouldn't get it. There was only certain jobs that you could get as a woman in there. I mean, there's so much I want to ask you. And I'm so fascinated by how much both of us have done things that maybe fill us with fear, but we did them anyway.
Yes.
Or we were compliant little girls, but really went out there and did the non-girly things.
Yes.
So I understand that continued for you, and you did quite a bit of traveling. So would you tell us a little bit about your travel days?
Yes. Well, one of the things I should say is that I was single for a long time. I'm actually married now. So I was single for many years, and I decided in my early 30s I'd like to take a year off work and go around the world. And I had been in therapy and stuff, and I decided I was going to finish with that and save up and whatever. And so I asked permission, left the job in England and went around the world. Well, so I'm geographically challenged. I bought Southeast Asia on a shoestring, which is a very handy book. Nowadays, of course, it's the internet. But I headed off to Bangkok and I arranged accommodation for the first night. And after that, I didn't arrange accommodation the whole way through.
Wow.
I just trusted that I'd, fly into these places and I would find something because I had the book. But my mother, I'm sure, was praying up a storm all year for me, for my safety, because I was travelling by myself.
Was it the rough guide for a good Catholic girl to travel?
When I was in Thailand, I went on this jungle trek. And part of it was going down a homemade raft that they made that morning. You saw them actually making the raft you're going to be on for 6 hours, being on an elephant's back. I mean, things like they were a far cry from the small village in Ireland where I grew up.
Yeah, but you've been on a fishing trawler.
Well,
that raft is nothing.
No, but the elephant was a bit high, I have to say.
Wow.
And they would sort of poop, and there'd be these big sort of like football ball size poops, It wasn't.
See, we might not talk boobs and bellies and bits today, but we're talking poop.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. So I went to Australia, and I spent 6 months there, and I worked in casual jobs, cooking, cleaning, and then I went to the States. And so, at times it would be nice to share it with someone because you're traveling by yourself. There's no one to take your photograph, that sort of thing. Well, you can ask someone, but you're always by yourself.
Nowadays, you'd have a selfie stick.
Exactly. It was pre selfies, but I loved it. And so I came back to England, and I came back to the house that I had been in and to rent.
Right.
I went back to the same job, and it was important for my confidence to feel like I wanted to do it by myself. I didn't want to do it with someone else.
Wow, you've been really fortunate to be able to say to an employer,
yes,
thanks for hiring me, but can we put that off for 3 months? Or love the job, but I'll be back next year in a year. That's pretty impressive.
They're pretty good.
I had a plan to travel the world.
Yeah.
It didn't go very well. I got as far as Canada, met my wonderful husband, and then everything changed.
Yeah.
So, but a few years ago for my 40th birthday, I was trying to do some photojournalism as part of my art life. And somebody we knew had just got back from Haiti, and they'd survived the earthquake. And long story short, they'd been working in Haiti for 35 years. And it just struck me that this person who had just survived the earthquake had to deal with some horrific scenes and some unexpected things that while she was there, returned back to Canada and was then having to do regular things like grocery shopping and so on. And so I asked if I could interview her as part of my understanding of resilience. And she caught me off guard, and she just said, sure, but it'd have to be in Haiti. And I hadn't really travelled.
Right.
I mean, my first big trip was from England to Canada, the start of the world tour, and that was where the world tour ended.
Right.
Whereas this being requested to go to Haiti was a whole different experience, and 6 months after the earthquake.
Wow.
And I ended up going 3 times to understand resilience and to understand the power of the Haitian people and so on and so forth. It was a wonderful experience, but I was petrified, and not because I was worried what would happen to me in Haiti, but just that whole process of being on my own or with this person I really didn't know, not really knowing where we were going, not knowing how we were going to stay, where we were going to stay, all those things. And you're facing a lot of fears.
Yeah.
I like to know what's coming next, and I had no idea. I mean, literally, if she'd have just left me in any one of those places, we travelled 9 hours out into the country. She could have left me there. I'd never have figured out my way.
Yes.
As you described it, spiritual, for me, it was more of that understanding of self more, connecting with what I can do, who I am, what was important to me, where my values lay, and trusting that I have strong instincts. And trusting those instincts.
And trusting yourself, that's so important. Because I think one of the things I realise is when you do things you're scared of, I see it as putting courage in the bank, and then you have courage for the next thing, Because when I went around the world, I did that, and 2 years later I met the man who's now my husband. Well, because it wasn't as big a deal to move to Canada, having already gone around the world. if I hadn't done that, it would have been a bigger deal.
Right.
It's not that it wasn't a big deal, but not as big a deal.
Yeah. And of course, if you'd have met him prior to that,
Yeah.
you may not have been the same person.
No.
I mean, for me, I'm glad I met my husband when I did, because I had gone through so much in my life, and I had this strong sense of who I was.
Yeah.
And as I met him.
Yeah.
And it meant that he got the real me. I was in a good place emotionally when I met him, and he was too. So we've survived 17 years together.
Yeah.
Whereas perhaps if we'd have met at a different time, a different emotional space for me, we wouldn't have made it through so long.
But I remember when I was dating him, I mean, I had done all this therapy about my insecurities and all this sort of stuff. So I'd done all the work. I thought, oh, well, I'll be a happy single person. And then I met this guy who's a big, tall Canadian. And I met him just before he left England. And he'd been there a year. I only met him the last few weeks. So I thought, well, that's not really going to go anywhere. But I remember thinking, you know, I'm going to have to be myself here. And if he doesn't like it, well, then it's not going to work. At an earlier time, I would have tried to be someone different.
Right.
But by that stage, I knew who I was. And I thought, well, if I can't be who I am with him, then that's not good enough.
Being truly who you are when you meet somebody, either a friend or get hired for a job or a soulmate, you're in for a much stronger relationship.
Yeah.
You know, and you're still going to adapt and change over time.
Yeah.
They still need a lot of training.
Yeah, yeah.
But being who you are has been crucial.
And you know, when I look back, I think what I regret is that I spent so long being preoccupied with finding someone. Because when you're single, there's so much pressure. Like, I grew up in the bar, and I'd come home from England or Dublin, wherever I lived, and the men in the bar would say, well, is he home yet? Yeah. Do you have somebody? Are you engaged? And there was so much pressure to be married, and it always felt like, oh, well, I should keep that on my radar at all times. And such a it's a distraction.
Right.
Because I was having a good time with everything else, but somehow that was the big should. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you stop trying so hard, I mean, I had no idea I would meet my husband. As I say, it was the start of my world tour. It was not on my radar. And it sounds like it wasn't on your radar either. And I think it's that sort of energetic pull.
Yeah.
Because we're so comfortable with who we are and what we have in life, then we get given a little bit extra.
Yes.
Or an extra burden.
Yes.
No, an extra blessing for sure. So, I mean, we could go on talking for hours. It sounds like we've got lots of things in common.
Yeah.
Lots of themes here. I want to hear way more about your traveling.
Thank you. You make it so easy to talk with you.
Well, and that's what PJ Chats is all about, right?
Yeah.
Join us, just get in the conversation and chat with us. So to wrap up, I mean, we started this in my mind as celebrating International Women's Week, celebrating being a woman, and recognizing and validating that in our society where we grew up, being a woman or being the girly girl was very different than what we needed, and very different to how we turned out.
Yeah.
But we've found joy and happiness.
Yeah.
We've faced fears. We've been empowered.
Yes.
And we know who we are. So is there any suggestion that you would give to somebody that's watching this on how to be a girly girl, even when you're not a girly girl?
Well, I think it's something about allowing yourself to have it all. You know, you can be girly girl, but that doesn't mean you don't do brave things. You know, and if you do brave things and do things that aren't very common for women, that doesn't mean you're not a real woman or a real, you know, that somehow you get to have all of it. And to trust yourself, not to worry so much about what other people think. Just trust yourself, trust your inner guidance to do what you want to do, you know.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. And we don't know your situation, only you know your situation. But just, I think for all of us, no matter where in the world we live, no matter who we are, whether we can express it outwardly or not, but to truly celebrate who you are, celebrate all that you are, whether it is different, whether it's girly girl or not girly girl, but truly, as women, let's empower other women to celebrate them as well. And at the end of the day, we have all the capabilities, and it's time that we start to just embrace. If you want to get on a fishing trawler, go figure out how to do that. If you want to be in a beauty pageant, go figure out how to do that. It's whatever you want to do. We're really hoping that our story will help you celebrate who you are as we celebrate who we are.
Yes.
So that's it for PJ Chats. Thanks again for my lovely PJ Chat pillow. I look forward to your questions, your comments, and your suggestions for other PJ Talks. So Grace
Yeah.
from Graceful Solutions. You'll see her website at the end. Give her a call. Let her know what you think of today. And of course, if you need help figuring out who you are, then she's the girl to call. Beautiful Women Project, that's my creation. You know where to find it. At the end of the day, happy International Women's Week and celebrate who you are.